Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and it's time for the Week 7 Injury Update Show. You guys know the deal. If you've been here before, I, an actual doctor, will go through the entire NFL slate, tell you about all the injuries that you need to know about for your fantasy team so that you're not playing a guessing game when it comes to your lineup decisions. And this week, we got a lot of teams on bye and a lot of injuries to talk about, so let's get into it. All right, before we talk about Thursday Night Football, we do have a moment of silence to talk about, and that's quarterback Anthony Richardson for the Indianapolis Colts. He had a grade 3 AC sprain, thought maybe he wouldn't have to have surgery, but the reports are now he is opting to do that surgery. Hasn't happened yet, but they are expecting him to have surgery on that grade 3 AC joint sprain, and we are expected to not have Anthony Richardson for the rest of this NFL season. He should be able to make a full recovery and come back, but moment of silence for Anthony Richardson. We have a lot of teams to talk about on bye this week. Panthers, Bengals, Cowboys, Texans, Jets, Titans. Huge bye week. Lots of decisions to make for your fantasy teams, but we're not going to be talking about any of those players because they are already out because of the bye. Let's talk about Thursday Night Football that happened last night. We got the Jaguars at the Saints happening as I record this video. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence dealing with a knee sprain, left Sunday's game in the fourth quarter, and there was some doubt that he would be able to play this week, but he was able to suit up, did play in last night's game. As of recording this, he does not have a touchdown yet. We'll see if that changes. Maybe it's a little bit different by the time you guys are watching, but he does appear to be fine to be able to play and has been playing okay. I've been watching him a little bit this afternoon, and it does look like he is at least moving around pretty well on the knee. Not something I'm crazy worried about for the rest of the year. As for wide receiver Zay Jones, his knee injury is not going well. He is not playing in this game, and he re-injured this knee in week 5. So Zay Jones, without him, he's probably droppable in most leagues. This injury doesn't look like something that is healing very quickly for Zay Jones. Now, as for the Saints, they're still without tight end Juwan Johnson. He's dealing with the calf strain. Wasn't able to practice at all this week, and reports are that he's still week to week with this calf injury. And then they had 3 offensive linemen miss last night's game with the O-line just being banged up. They're all hurting. They're all sitting out. Landon Young, James Hurst, and Ryan Ramczyk. So the Saints offensive line looking to get healthy with the extended time off after this game. Now, heading over to the early Sunday games, the games that have not happened yet. Let's talk about Lions at the Ravens. Lions, a lot of offensive weapons hurting this week. Running back David Montgomery is dealing with a rib cartilage injury, has not practiced yet as of this recording. And these injuries can take a little bit of time to heal from. It's not like a rib. The cartilage is a different type of tissue. It takes a lot longer to heal than a rib bruise or even a small rib fracture would take to heal. He landed hard on the football, left the game immediately. I don't expect him to play this week, and it could be even a few more weeks before we see David Montgomery coming back. Normally, I'd say that's good news for running back Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's been dealing with his own injury in the hamstring strain, limited practices so far this week. If there was ever a time for Gibbs to get healthy, it is right now. This guy has got to take the opportunity that David Montgomery being out presents him and show why he was worth the 12th overall pick in this year's draft. The Lions are already starting to take a little bit of flack for taking Gibbs at that 12th overall pick, even though I think they actually crushed the draft picks that they made this year. I do think that this pick is one that they are maybe wanting back thus far. I'd like to see him make a comeback this week and prove he was worthy of that 12th overall pick. I do think he's going to be splitting some time with running back Craig Reynolds, who's coming off hamstring and toe injuries. Didn't practice Wednesday, limited on Thursday. He is arguably the healthiest running back in the group right now, but I do think that with him missing some time, there's a chance here, if Jahmyr Gibbs can come back, for him to really take over this backfield in the next few weeks. But Craig Reynolds does look like he is on track to play this week. As for tight end Sam Laporta, dealing with a calf strain, showed up late in the injury reports last week, didn't get a talk about it in the injury video. He does have a calf strain, ultimately played through it. I do expect him to play through it this week, and the Ravens are actually pretty healthy. So we're just going to move on to the Raiders at the Bears. Two teams dealing with quarterback injuries. We'll start with the Raiders quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo dealing with a back injury, didn't practice at all this week, already has been ruled out. Not a lot of information on this back injury for Jimmy Garoppolo. There was some concern for internal injuries, according to head coach Josh McDaniels. Garoppolo reportedly dodged a bullet with this internal injury. Makes me think that this is a pretty serious back injury. I'm not expecting to see Garoppolo anytime soon. I do expect that Brian Hoyer will step in and lead the Raiders this week after they tried starting Aiden O'Connell earlier in the year, and he was a complete disaster. And I do think the Raiders are trying to win games. And don't forget about that squeaky wheel. Devontae Adams talking about how he wants to be used in the offense a little bit more. Hopefully, if you're starting him, he can get it going with Brian Hoyer stepping in at quarterback. As for the Bears, their quarterback, Justin Fields, has a right thumb dislocation, kind of an ugly looking injury, similar injury to one that I actually had in high school. Dislocated my thumb, looked almost exactly the same as Justin Fields. Some fun history facts from the doc, but this dislocated thumb in week 6. And the reports are he popped this thing back in itself. I was not nearly tough enough to do that when I had this injury. He popped it back in, but he doesn't have the grip strength to actually hold on to the football and throw it with any velocity. So he's already been ruled out this week. I'd expect him to miss at least a couple weeks with this injury while he's working on gaining that grip strength back. Tyler Bagent, I don't know, Baguette, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. That guy's going to probably be starting for the Bears, and let's be honest, I think they're tanking pretty obviously at this point, with Justin Fields expected to miss some time. Running back Roschon Johnson dealing with the concussion, expected him to come back this week, but he hasn't practiced yet at all. Khalil Herbert already been placed on the IR. Johnson, with him missing last week, I would have expected him to be further along in the concussion protocol, but he's still having symptoms. Kind of had him penciled in for a nice stretch here with Herbert not expected to play. Was hoping we'd see some more Roschon Johnson, get him a chance to get some time, but the fact that he's not practicing at all tells me he's probably going to miss this week as well. And Deontay Foreman should get the start, but Travis Homer is back and healthy, so he might be splitting a little bit more work than he did last week. Heading over to the Browns at the Colts, Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson finally getting some news on this injury that's been described as a bruise and a contusion. Now we're learning that he does have a rotator cuff tear. It's a small tear. He was able to practice in a limited capacity on Thursday, but having some clarity with this injury tells us a little bit more about the timeline. So they're calling it a bruise, but it turns out that this tear is a little bit more serious when we're talking about recovery timelines. Typically with a rotator cuff tear, if it's small enough, and they did call it a micro tear, there is a chance that it could heal itself, but there's been reports that they're expecting him to deal with this for the rest of the season and then maybe have surgery in the offseason. No confirmed surgery as of yet, but it's not ideal if you've got a lot of Browns stock. Now, the good news is he was able to get some light throwing in on Thursday. It does look like he is potentially able to come back this week, but I'm going to guess and say that he is not able to actually return this week, and we're looking at a couple more weeks before we see Deshaun Watson back. As for the Colts, wide receiver Alec Pierce is dealing with a shoulder sprain. Didn't practice on Wednesday, limited Thursday, landed hard on the shoulder. I'd still expect him to play. And then tight end Kylan Granson dealing with a concussion, has not practiced yet. Looks like Mo Alley Cat Cox is going to come in and start at tight end for the Colts. who are without quarterback Anthony Richardson for the rest of the year, if you didn't catch that in the moment of silence. Moving on to the Bills at the Patriots. Bills quarterback Josh Allen dealing with a shoulder injury. Did get a full practice in on Thursday, so we're not crazy concerned about this, but he had x-rays after week 6. They came back negative. He's practicing in full. Just something to know that he's dealing with some type of shoulder issue, but it doesn't look like something that I'm crazy worried about right now. As for running back Damian Harris, probably the scariest injury from last week, has a neck sprain and concussion, has not practiced yet this week. Really scary. Got tackled and then immediately taken to the hospital via ambulance. Luckily, the tests all checked back for him. No major neck injury occurred, and he's not going to play this week, but should return at some point this year. Tight end Dalton Kincaid dealing with a concussion. He's back practicing in full. He should be able to play this week. And then defensive tackle Ed Oliver is dealing with a turf toe injury. He hasn't practiced yet. Looks like they're going to be without their best interior D lineman with him dealing with this turf toe injury. Now, for the Patriots, probably the most hurt team in the league this week. 21 players on their injury report right now. We're going to talk about tight end Hunter Henry first. He has an ankle sprain, hasn't practiced yet this week. Looks like Mike Gesicki is going to get a chance to be a low-end tight end streamer, probably a tight end 2 for me, but we know that Mac Jones has used the tight end, so maybe Gesicki can be a quick streamer if you're looking for that type of option. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster is dealing with a concussion. He's back practicing in a limited capacity, appears to be on track to return this week, but I'm not even thinking about throwing him into my fantasy lineups, even if I'm desperate. It does affect Kendrick Bourne's upside as a wide receiver 3, though, if Juju Smith-Schuster is taking 3 to 5 targets away from him. And then the Patriots' offensive line is really banged up right now. 4 starters on the injury report, but offensive tackle Riley Reiff looks to be the most likely of the 4 to miss this week for sure. Heading over to the Giants at the Commanders. Giants, another team with a lot of offensive line troubles. Almost all of them are hurt right now. Offensive tackle Matt Peart, center John Michael Schmitz, offensive tackle Andrew Thomas, all not practicing. Doesn't look like any of them are going to be able to play. And then their starting guard, Shane Lemieux, dealing with a biceps tear in practice. Tore his biceps. He's been placed on IR. The hits just keep coming for a banged up Giants offensive line. And then their quarterback is hurt as well. Daniel Jones, dealing with that neck strain, is back practicing this week in a limited capacity. But I'd argue that Tyrod Taylor actually looked pretty good last week, given that he's protected by a line made up of wet paper bags and tackling dummies. I don't think that Tyrod looked too bad in last week's game. I'd give Jones another week off if I was the Giants. And the Commanders are pretty healthy, so we're moving into the last game of the early slate. Falcons at the Buccaneers. No injuries to talk about in this game. So finally, a healthy game where 2 teams are going to be able to go at it at full strength. All right, let's head into the afternoon slate. First up, we got Steelers at the Rams. Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth coming off of a hamstring strain, dealing with a full practice on Wednesday, downgraded to a limited practice on Thursday. So a little bit interesting that he was downgraded, but I haven't seen any reports of it being a setback. So I'm going to guess that this was a planned light day for Pat Freiermuth and that he will be able to return this week. Another guy returning for the Steelers, wide receiver Deontay Johnson, dealing with a hamstring strain, was placed on IR. He is getting back to full practices this week. Looks like he will be 100% and ready to go, hopefully bring in a little bit more life back to the Steelers offense, but a slight downgrade for George Pickens, given that Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson both coming back this week. And probably the biggest injury for the Steelers this week is linebacker TJ Watt, dealing with a heel issue. Wasn't on the report at all on Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday. Not great news for the defense with him missing practice on Thursday, but after not being on the report on Wednesday, I have to wonder if this is something that is new or if it is is just something that they're giving him a day off because it's bothering him. Until we hear anything else about it, I'm going to say he's a game time decision for Sunday, and hopefully we get some more news either today or tomorrow. As for the Rams, running back Kyren Williams dealing with an ankle sprain, has not practiced yet at all this week. Head coach Sean McVay wasn't willing to commit to Williams not going on the IR with this injury. Some reports that he was on a scooter with what looked like a cast around the ankle. So could be that they're downplaying this injury a bit. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks, but don't expect him to play this week. And I would be looking for a multiple week replacement for Kyren Williams, who arguably through 6 weeks is the biggest breakout star at the running back position for fantasy football. Now, you might be looking at running back Ronnie Rivers as the backup for Williams. The problem is he has a knee injury and was already placed on IR this week. So no Rivers, no Kyren Williams. Zach Evans looks to be rumored to be the starter this week for the Rams, but the team also brought in Royce Freeman, Darrell Henderson, and Myles Gaskin to compete with Zach Evans. So I'm going to say that he's going to get a week to show if he can be the starter. If not, we're probably looking at a big fat committee for the Rams running backs. Now, let's head over to the Cardinals at the Seahawks. Cardinals dealing with quarterback drama. Kyler Murray, coming off of an ACL tear last year, is back at practice. He has had his IR window opened, so he can practice for the next 21 days, but not count towards the 53-man roster. I don't expect him to return necessarily this week, but that 21-day window being open does tell me that the team expects him to play at some point. They're paying him a bunch of money. I don't think they're just going to sit him all year, but I do think that Kyler Murray is going to be able to come back sooner rather than later. If you are desperate at quarterback, pick him up. If he's been sitting, nobody wanted to draft him. Let's say he hasn't been on somebody's roster stashed as an IR spot. Go pick up Kyler Murray if you're looking for an upgrade at quarterback, because it does look like he's going to play at some point in the next few weeks. As for the Seahawks, running back is Zach Charbonnet. Fancy has a hamstring strain, though. Hasn't practiced yet this week. Looks like he's not going to be able to suit up. That would put DJ Dallas in as the backup for Kenneth Walker. Now, wide receiver DK Metcalf dealing with rib and hip injuries. Has not practiced yet this week, but hasn't missed any games so far. So if he doesn't practice on Friday, I'm a little bit more concerned for it. But as of right now, I'm saying it's just a maintenance plan for DK Metcalf, and he will be able to play. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett also dealing with a hamstring issue. He's gotten limited practice in this week. Looks like he's on track to play, but I would like to see them work in the rookie Jackson Smith-Njigba a little bit more in the passing game. He is too talented to just be a wide receiver 3 on this team. Let's get him more involved, especially in the red zone, where Geno Smith has looked really, really bad this year. He has not been playing well when they get within 20 yards of the end zone. Let's head over to the Packers at the Broncos. Packers running back Aaron Jones is dealing with a hamstring strain himself. Limited practices thus far this week. Nobody needed a bye week to get right more than Aaron Jones. Huge first game to start the year, but that's really been the only bright spot for the running back thus far. Dealing with this hamstring issue ever since he broke out in that first game. Hoping for a full practice on Friday, but I do expect him to return even if he is still limited. He is startable for me coming off this injury against a bad Broncos run defense, and I also think that A.J. Dillon is startable this week against the Broncos. Broncos don't really have any injuries to talk about, so we're going to head straight to the Chargers at the Chiefs. Chargers linebacker Joey Bosa dealing with the turf toe. Limited practices this week. Returned last week, wasn't able to record a sack. He should continue to get healthier as the weeks go on. He gets further away from this injury. But the Chargers are going to need him this week to put more pressure on Pat Mahomes and potentially give them a chance to win this game. Chargers looking for a get-right game here against the Chiefs. As for the Chiefs, wide receiver Justin Watson has a dislocated elbow. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to play this week. Perhaps the most surprising stat that I heard this week was Justin Watson was leading all Chiefs wide receivers in yardage heading into week 6. So before last week, Justin Watson best wide receiver on the Chiefs by yardage standpoints. Now, I know that the actual best wide receiver on the Chiefs is Travis Kelce, but this dislocated elbow is going to affect Justin Watson for the next 2 or 3 weeks. The team did trade for Mecole Hardman, a familiar face to bring back into the offense. I'm still holding out hope, though, that maybe a bigger trade for a wide receiver is on the horizon, because I just don't think they have enough to get it done this year. Now, let's head into Sunday night football. We got the Dolphins at the Eagles, a Bama quarterback battle in the NFL. Dolphins running back Jeff Wilson dealing with rib and finger issues. Thought he was going to be able to come back last week. I jumped the gun a little bit that he was going to be splitting carries with Mostert last week. Hopefully you were starting Raheem Mostert no matter what. Huge game again, but Jeff Wilson does look like he's practicing in full this week. Even though he didn't play last week, he's back practicing. I do expect him to play this week. And then cornerback Jalen Ramsey has a meniscus tear, had surgery, back practicing way early. Thought we would not see him until at least December. So a little bit of surprising news for the Dolphins. He is expected to be able to return in the next few weeks from this meniscus injury. So really quick recovery for the Dolphins cornerback. And it's good news because that secondary has a lot of guys banged up right now. They need Jalen Ramsey back sooner rather than later. As for the Eagles, free safety Reed Blankenship, one of their better tacklers, has a rib contusion, hasn't been practicing, doesn't look like he's going to be able to play this week. Defensive tackle Jalen Carter, who missed week 6 with the ankle injury, is back practicing in a limited capacity. It looks like he is on track to play. Tight end Dallas Goedert has a groin strain. He's been limited this week in practice, but he's still pacing towards playing. I think he's kind of a low-end tight end 1 for me for this week and this matchup. And then wide receiver Devontae Smith dealing with a hamstring strain. Didn't practice Wednesday. Had a lot of people concerned, hit me up in my DMs, but don't fear. Limited on Thursday, said that he expects to play, so just know he's a little banged up, but he should be able to play. Last game of the week, Monday Night Football. We got 49ers at the Vikings. 49ers, they got a lot of injuries to talk about. The injury luck has finally turned on the Niners, a team notorious for having guys banged up, and we had a bad week in week 6. Running back Christian McCaffrey, probably the biggest injury of the week, dealing with an oblique strain. Didn't practice at the walkthrough on Thursday. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is probably my worst nightmare as an injury analyst. I'm dealing with just Thursday reports. It's just a walkthrough. The best running back in the league is hurt, and the team's calling it day to day, so they're not really giving us much. But if he plays on Monday night, we're not going to have a whole lot of information as of recording this. So you're going to have to look up some information. I'm going to try to leave a pinned comment if I get anything new telling me anything about Christian McCaffrey or really any of the 49ers that are injured. I'm going to try to include that in the comment at the top, but don't hit me up with a, what about Christian McCaffrey? What about Christian McCaffrey as soon as this drops, because I honestly don't have any new information as of today, recording this, and probably not even Friday morning am I going to have any new information. So just be patient. I will put something if something big breaks, but just know with him playing on Monday night, you got to have a backup plan if you're planning on waiting it out for Christian McCaffrey. Either one of the other running backs. I'm personally leaning more towards Elijah Mitchell to be the running back. I know Jordan Mason has been better, but I think that the team trusts Elijah Mitchell in these situations. We've seen them trust him before. And again, worst case scenario, you have to slide somebody into this spot for Christian McCaffrey on Monday night, but don't catch yourself sleeping and hoping that he's going to be able to play. The team has a bye week in week 9. There's a better chance of Christian McCaffrey sitting for the next 3 weeks than there is him playing on Monday. So just have a plan if you want to take that risk. Speaking of risk, wide receiver Deebo Samuel dealing with a shoulder sprain, didn't practice in the walkthrough either on Thursday. Left the game early in week 6, immediately changed into street clothes. Samuel took a helmet to the front of his shoulder. Initially, he said in reports that his arm went completely numb, but then he backtracked on that statement, didn't want to give up too much information. It sounds like a possible nerve issue for Deebo Samuel. He said he's in a lot of pain right now. Again, unlike CMC, you're going to probably have to make a decision on Debo before Monday night. If it's me, I'm sitting him. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. And we know that with this team's bye coming up in a couple weeks, they could choose to sit both of these guys and wait for them to be healthy. Now, the Vikings, they don't have to do that because they don't really have any injuries to talk about. All right, guys, that's it for the Week 7 injury update show. Is there anybody I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to thank our sponsors over at Manscaped. Use the code HEADLINERS, get 20% off and free shipping on your first order. Make sure you guys are signing up at pristineauction.com. We're giving away all sorts of incredible goodies from Pristine Auction, and you guys want to be a part of that. So make sure when you sign up, free account, use the code HEADLINERS so that you are entered into all the giveaways that we are having this year with Pristine Auction. Of course, want to thank our friends at Underdog Fantasy, the best place to be playing daily fantasy with the Headliners this year. Use the code HEADLINERS, get $100 first deposit match on us. But guys, that's it for the injury update show. Appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next week. The Doc is out.